Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV. We are talking Season 1, Episode 7 of Kolchak, the Night Stalker, the wonderful show from the early to mid-'70s that was the template for the X-Files, Millennium, Lost, and every other so-called sci-fi big-time show of all time. It's up there. Not nearly as good as Twin Peaks, our other show that we're covering here on Xtreme TV, but damn it, just as entertaining. And gentlemen, I'm going to start up by saying a lot of these Kolchak episodes have been a bit hit and miss for me, but still, Darren McGavin's always interesting to watch. But this episode with a younger Tom Skerritt wanting to sacrifice Kolchak and has the ability to turn into man's best friend, this is a phenomenal episode. I love it. I think it's outstanding. Man, to have a dog walking around Midtown Chicago looking to gut Kolchak in broad daylight, you can't write better TV than that. What are your initial thoughts about this episode?
Well, this dog's bite is just as bad as his bark. The whole elevator scene in there. Man goes in, dog comes out.
Two go in, only one leave. Yeah, so Tom Skerritt plays this politician that apparently made a deal with the devil to rise up the ranks. It has almost a bit of an Omen type theme where, if you're familiar with the Omen movies going back to the 70s, those are really great movies. We have not covered them yet on the Too Extreme Horror Show. We will be in the future, but it's tying in being a politician with make a deal with the devil. And it's not really said if you're conservative Republican here, they smartly don't put that in here. But yes, Skerritt's basically getting called out by his campaign supervisor, who's supposedly an honest guy. That's the most absurd thing ever when it comes to politics. You know, the campaign manager being innocent, saying, I'm going to take all this information, go right to the DA. And they're in the elevator as they're going down the floor that Kolchak's at the bottom. All of a sudden, there's this poof, and the elevator drops all the way down. Everybody dies their bed up, and there's this big, huge dog in the back.
He just comes out.
I love it. And he's got the upside down satanic symbol necklace for it. That because obviously he's not spayed or neutered. It doesn't have a tag. Pixel, I hope you haven't lost your bite here. What do you say? Let's bark a little bit about it.
Well, here is the Night Talker.
Yeah, you got to chew a little bit on that subject there.
As we've gone through each episode, I talk about how I hate it when the main villain is weak. The monster of the week is weak. This one is actually quite strong. It's pretty clear what's happening. Kolchak gets to figure it out quickly. And you're absolutely right. We live in a day in television where even the most simple show can't seem to avoid going into some political spectrum. But this, even though we're dealing with politicians directly, it doesn't say what side is satanic.
Needed. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just that thing. Okay, yeah, this politician clearly signed his soul to the devil. That makes sense. And that's all that has to be said. I thought the dog bit was a little silly. But
why?
You know,
it's this giant Rottweiler. It's not a cute fuzzy little dog, which of course wouldn't make sense. It's believable. This dog's a bit terrifying. Look, everybody loves a German Shepherd, right? Which seems to be pretty standard for television when they would use a dog, or like Lassie, a different kind of collie way back in the day. So you can argue about dogs. This dog legitimately was terrifying, I thought. But you think using the dog was silly, or what exactly?
Well, with how it starts, he becomes a dog, and then the elevator starts going Tower of Terror style, up, down, up, down. That felt a little unnecessary. I guess the dog bit was to hide the fact that he was in the elevator alive the entire time. I don't know. It felt a little unnecessary. But later on, you're right. This dog is absolutely terrifying. I will not deny that. You say classic Cujo, absolutely got those Cujo vibes. But at the same time, I feel like it was unnecessary. That doesn't make it bad. It just didn't have to be there. the villain was great. I felt he had that vibe, that smarmy politician that he should have.
He
and
was
it was
slick,
a solid
not stupid.
episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the anachronistic elements in here that somebody your age doesn't really get or appreciate the detail to it is we do see that when the elevator drops all the way down, and yeah, the way it films, it looks a little dated. I don't disagree with you on that. But Kolchak does something we actually don't see him do too much. He actually starts taking a bunch of pictures, but we see him actually starting to develop them. And of course, the development of film like that's pretty much a lost art. I was around it briefly in my younger years, not much to really say about it, other than to go, it wasn't as easy then as it is now to get information. So I thought that was pretty neat because Kolchak doesn't know what's going on. He's at the bottom of the stairwell because he's supposed to go interview this guy. And what I thought was kind of neat to me, probably the most hilarious scene in here was, yeah, you said excessive. I say not excessive enough, because Kolchak goes to leave after he takes pictures with the dog, and he just starts walking down the street, and then it cuts to the dog, and the dog's literally walking on the sidewalk with everybody around him just following Kolchak like he's going to go get him. And I just thought, this is awesome. They let it play out a little bit. But even the scene where Tom Skerritt shows up again back in human form, he's meeting like an old flame at the Lincoln Park Zoo, and she's like, "Oh, it's just like that. You don't need me anymore." It's like, "Well, easy come, easy go, babe." And then he turns into a dog and mauls her, and these cops show up, and it's a really bad piece of film the way they shoot. You don't see anything, and the dog stands there and runs off. But what they smartly did, as far as writing, is they explained it that when Kolchak's interviewing one of the cops on the scene, the cop's like, "Yeah, I ain't never seen nothing like it, man." Kolchak turns his tape recorder off. It's like, "Yeah, so what happened?" And he goes, "Yeah, we fired at this dog. I'm not going to say it was point blank, but it was pretty close. And it just seemed like he liked it, and he just ran off." And he goes, "Well, did you hit the thing?" And he goes, I don't know, maybe or whatever." That was kind of unnecessary and stupid and unrealistic in a way, but the point is they took what they probably knew was a bad scene they didn't have time to reshoot or edit and made it a part of the plot with it. But man, working with the live rot like that was so damn cool. It was just neat to see all that. But I have to say, this just seemed like a funner episode. The only down part to me was, of course, the Vincenzo stuff and the asshole mustache partner of his that I just can't stand and have to fast forward every time. RDV, what did you make of this clown?
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I also kind of like popped when I saw this Tom Skerritt, because this is a whole different side of him. This is he must have hid this on picket fences. Holy crap! And yeah, it makes more sense to have to get away. They become a dog, just get away from that, because most people are looking for a human, and then there's acting like that. It's just no one really pays attention to a dog. Obviously, in the show, we saw that. Because he's like, remember, Kolchak is like, "What about the dog?" He's like, "What dog? There was no dog there." And he's going around and asking stuff, and finally he found out it's basically a hellhound.
Yes,
that's what it's supposed to be. And I kind of like how the ending, the just desserts, because how he found Robert Palmer back down to his little house, and then there's a little cave dungeon where he's got his little worshiping thing.
Cellar.
Yeah. And Kolchak's in there. I love how Kolchak he hits a bottle. Like, he's such a klutz. So I don't know if it's because he's scared.
Let's hold off on the end though for a second though too, because Pixel I think was going to say something. Yeah, let's hold off on the ending for a second.
But I can't remember though. It's been a while since I watched this. Wasn't there a part where someone was driving down the road and the dog ran out and caused the accident?
Well, yeah, that's what we find out is that when Kolchak starts diving into this politician because he's getting the runaround from his wife, that nobody really knows where the guy came from. He's just having this meteoric rise in the political world too, and he realizes that anybody that opposed him or somehow got in his way died in some weird accident, and he puts that together in a chronological order, and he goes, "Oh, this must make sense." But while he's developing the photos, he sees a picture of the dog owner that actually has this upside down satanic symbol on there, the upside down 5-starred cross, Star of David, I guess you might call it. A little loose in my religious knowledge.
Pentagram.
Yeah. So, Pixar, you were going to say something about this before we get to the final scene?
I was going to actually talk about Vincenzo.
Go ahead. Yeah.
While we do give him some shit over him basically ignoring Kolchak every episode. I feel like there was enough balance to it that it actually made sense. He said, I don't mind doing a political piece. If you want to get political about it, at least have facts. This dog has nothing to do. I can't write about a dog. That doesn't make sense. And he's absolutely right. Even though it makes sense to us, we get the whole satanic element. You can't write about that. What are you going to do? I have to defend Vincenzo this episode.
I just love how the ending narration with he's talking about Vincenzo. Like, I gave him my copy to Vincenzo. The way he crumpled up and threw it away, give me the distinction that he was, wasn't going to print it. Like, and I love he gives a little humor like that. But are we allowed to talk about the ending now, sir? Can we, please?
Are we allowed? Well, let's review here. We have Tom Skerritt as, was it Robert Palmer? Not that Robert Palmer, but just a Robert Palmer, a mediocrized politician played by Tom Skerritt rather convincingly with a rather, not even slick, but just kind of understated tone of voice like this. Like you're like, damn, Tom's delivering in the good Skerritt at his younger age. And Kolchak pieces everything together and finally gets to his last house. And yes, the ending almost, I don't know if you thought this, RDB, I'll just say it seemed not abrupt, but the back and forth between the two before the final dog part that you were starting to mention, I thought was kind of neat because Tom Skerritt's character, Palmer, knows that he's there. But I got to say this. We've talked about a few movies on, say, the Two Extreme Horror Show dealing with the 80s. We've talked a couple of science fiction films, especially some Charlton Heston films, where we've talked about how the set pieces look really, really good because they're really basic. There's no CGI in it. And I will have to say this. It's a dated-looking scene, but Tom Skerritt coming out in his robe and, Kolchak's there in the wine cellar trying to hide. He says, you can come on out now, Mr. Kolchak. And, he's got that long sacrificial dagger in there.
Yeah,
he's got that really
he's arrogant.
Awesome looking satanic photo on there. He is, but he's not maniacal. He's just rather kind of calmly professional about it. And this whole back and forth and the set piece with the fire burning right in front of him just looks great. Yep. It looks, like I said before, one of the themes of the 60s and 70s is how do you bring occultism and Satanism into public knowledge on the small screen, on the big screen, which is what people were trying to do and make it mainstream. And even though Kolchak's Monster of the Week, here with the politician and the dog, it really works well. But he offers him a choice, basically saying, hey, someone like you, is a good reporter, not a great one, I have to say, you have a lot of temperamental feelings that seem to get in the way. Mm-hmm. He says, but I know that you've really always wanted a Pulitzer Prize and always wanted to work for a big newspaper in New York. I could definitely use somebody like you on me. And it's like, and Kolchak's like, well, where are you going? And he goes, well, to the top, which, implies the presidency. And I just thought that little meeting there, them talking back and forth, was done really, really, really good. And I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah. Not really that. It's just like I said, like I love the fact that Kolchak, I said, but I love that he's a klutz. And sometimes I get at the screen, I'm like, you dumbass. It's like, what are you doing? Like whenever he's we've seen these other episodes, we've seen him where he is like looking in the window, the vampire. Is anybody in there? I'm like, they're gonna see you if they're in there. I'm waiting for this to open the thing and just scare the crap out of you.
He's the Chevy Chase of the occult investigative world.
Yeah.
It's like in the first episode. In the first episode, whenever Jack the Ripper is just reaching in the closet, grabbing something, doesn't even know he's there. Kolchak's like, and runs out like a cartoon.
And I kind of like that they kind of like the kind of humor like that, because without comedic lines or anything like that, like he has with the mortician. The guy who works at the morgue, the doctor. He's like, I need the notes, to take care of it. I was watching one of the recently episodes. He's like, I want a new color TV. He's like, I wanted 60 or a nice big TV. I can lay right here so I can watch stuff. He's like, do you know how much those cost? He's like, yeah, and you owe me. It's like, I love how it turns on me where he starts getting extorted for money because he's trying to get stuff from them. He always screws them over, but.
Yeah, it's
But-
not a one-way affair with Kolchak. He tries to bribe people, he tries to lean on favors and all that stuff, and that could be a convenient writing plot device. But when you're writing something like that too, it's neat to see that Kolchak himself gets, he's not just a bumbling fool sometimes just because he's scared. He gets taken advantage of too. I think that's a good point.
I also want to touch on what you said before, Rob, about how their interaction with each other is spot on. It's great. You get that vibe. I feel like if this wasn't a Monster of the Week show, if somebody were to try to do a serious reboot of it, that this would definitely be one of the characters that they would pull to try to extend out, because he definitely could have lasted more than one episode, and I almost wish he did, because like I said, he's a solid actor. His interaction with Darren McGavin is great, and I really enjoyed that aspect of this episode too.
Yeah, I've noticed that as you go through, even the smaller actors you never heard of in here are actually really good for their roles.
Oh, yeah.
The casting is spot on. Sometimes, you might get some kind of silly things like the elevator thing. It's like, you know what? But I look past it. It's a freaking 70s. I don't expect it. Like, and I know what I do. I compare that today. It's still better than today's crap.
Yeah, and that's a strong comment, because we're talking 45, 50 years ago since the show's been on. But to your point, you're starting to describe after they have this interaction, and Kolchak's like, well, what if I need time to think about it or don't take it? And he's like, well, I've had to sacrifice, goats or higher level intellectual creatures, and I'll have to do that again tonight, pretty soon, which means he's going to whack them. And Kolchak just sort of bumbles his way forward where Skerritt turns into the dog. And I don't know if it was acid because it was a wine cellar. I couldn't quite catch it. Maybe it happened faster.
He took the pendant and put it in holy water.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the holy water just.
Yeah, so that caused
so
that caused him to Palmer to be stuck in the dog form when you see him run away. Now,
then he pets the dog, and he's a nice little cute boy.
Yeah, the little dog. Yeah. So, and I love how this narration is. He's like, I went to go talk to Mrs. Palmer, but she was gone already. So hopefully out there somewhere, Miss Palmer is out there, and since she's got herself a little black dog, Rottweiler, and he's licking her hand, comfortably, because she disappeared.
What's your slipper?
Well, she knew, and things that she knew everything that was going on. So. With her husband, so who knows that maybe he bet her soul too. We don't know. That's the thing. But I love Coach to say, he's like,
yeah. So
Coach,
we're 7 episodes into the series, almost halfway through. Go ahead.
I was going to say that Kolchak kept his promise, or not Kolchak. No, Kolchak said that Palmer kept his. He always keeps his promises, campaign promises, and this happened to be his soul. That's all I got.
So I think I would ask both you guys as we finish up this episode, being about 7 episodes in, what is it we like about this character?
Was what? You robot.
Oh, I heard him. He said, "What is it you like about this character?"
Well, it's Tom Skerritt. If it had been anybody else, I wouldn't have cared as much as this role. Because Tom Skerritt's a phenomenal actor.
I think he means Kolchak.
Kolchak?
Yeah,
it's the same episode. It's the same character every episode. He doesn't get any more depth than his character. You're not going to see any character development.
Well, no, it's not about character development. Basically, why do we like him? And Kolchak is he's not the perfect guy. He's not the action hero that we get in some shows, but in this. Basically, he's the one who knows everything that's going on, even when he's learning about it. He knows something supernatural is going on, something different that he can't just explain. And even though he wants to report on it and nobody will ever let him, he does the right thing. He handles the problem every single time. He's not the perfect hero, but he's the hero we need. And that's why I enjoy him.
I think it's the hero we get, not the But yes, yeah, I said he's your bumbling reporter, the one that always gets stuck with all this crap. He's got the worst luck. Everybody, I don't know how he has a job. He never writes any articles. Like, so, yeah. So that's pretty much.
Well,
it for the show.
think that he. Yeah, I think that he. It's interesting to see all the characters that he interacts with, whether it's his coworkers or just the stars of the week or just people in an episode that we don't know who they are, really small characters. He seems to be the only one that really, like you say, knows what's going on. But I think it's like an awareness thing. It's like he wants to be more aware of his situation. And just being a child in the 70s makes me think of the 70s were probably like the last fun decade. I mean, the 80s kind of were, but the 70s were definitely a little bit more freer, I think, and less cynical in a sense. And it's interesting that everybody's just kind of carefree, moving about, doing their thing in the 70s. And yet he's the only one that just seems like he's only content when he's going after something too. And I think that's interesting because he can't just let it go. And I love that about him because it's a flaw, but it's a strength as well too. And it's certainly not the monster of the week, although of course, the variety each week is, I think, another big factor of this show.
His passion for everything. When he knows he's right and he's trying to save lives, like he's always ridiculing the cops. Is like, you guys are the worst cops ever, pretty much. He's like, I'm trying to save lives here. You're worried about your paycheck or your whatever you're doing.
I am so glad in this episode we did not get another police chief saying, "Oh, Kolchak, you better stay away." It's the only person complaining of this episode was Vincenzo. That was it.
You better quit while you're ahead.
I was just going to mention that because it's an easy template to fall into, but that cynicism that Kolchak has sometimes the voiceovers or as he's going along, I do like it. But this is a bit more of a subdued episode as far as him going off the rails with Vincenzo and a police chief, let's say, or somebody else. And I actually like that. It made me take his character a bit more serious rather than a stage character and all that too. So that being said, some of the familiar elements that we know aren't necessarily fully present in this episode, I think makes us go, it's a stronger episode. Plus the dog just does it for me every time. I mean, it was phenomenal with the dog growling.
We know you love dogs. We know you love dogs. It's okay, yeah, Rob.
It's oh man. And it's one of the few times we see on the small screen or even the big screen where a dog doesn't, well, that's not true. The dog doesn't die at the end, but it definitely gets transformed. So I'll just leave it at that. All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Kolchak, season 1, episode 7, like what I like to call the doggy episode or the politician episode, the younger Tom Skerritt episode. Great episode, a lot of fun. We're going to be covering episode 8 next week. I'd like to thank Professor Pixel, aka the Night Talker, and RDV. I'm Classic Rob, aka for tonight, Classic Cujo only, presenting this show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for retweeting about it. As always, stay extreme. Have a good night, everybody.
Stay safe out there.